Greetings, friends and Force and fellow historians of our archives, and welcome back to our academy. I have been expecting. Recently, a lot of our lore has been dedicated to the life and tales of Darth Vader, the story of one of the most fearsome and ferocious Sith Lords to ever have existed. Darth Vader was a merciless battlefield tactician and mastering the art of combat to rival some of the ancient Siths such as Darth Malgus in terms of pure fighting skill and brutality. Vader utilized his lightsaber and Force abilities in union with one another, utilizing them to devastating effect, to the point Darth Vader was regarded as one of the most powerful Sith Lords in galactic history. He successfully plowed through every single Jedi in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant with relative ease during the outbreak of Order 66, along with his clone troopers. He killed Sindralig, Shaak Ti, as well as a menagerie of Padawans, killing perhaps 1,000 Jedi, or at least multiple hundred. Vader felled more Jedi perhaps more than any other being in history, save for one other, Tulak Hord. Darth Vader was a master of the lightsaber, while beings like Grandmaster Yoda, Darth Sidious, and even the highly praised Luke Skywalker have achieved true mastery of the blade. None stand up to Darth Vader, who is perhaps the most powerful Sith duelist in all of the lore, with his only rivals being Exar Kun and Tulak Hord. So my friends, join us as we explore the mechanics of Vader's complex and indomitable lightsaber form, to explore why and how Vader was never able to be put down in a lightsaber duel. Initially after gaining his suit, Vader was forced to rely on his newly enhanced strength and reach, utilizing a clumsy method that consisted of little more than stiffly executed vertical and overhand strikes that served to wear down his opponent's stamina and defense. This initial method was seen to elements of Form 3 Sarisu and Form 4 Atari blade work in conjunction with his clumsy Djemso strikes, as witnessed by Jedi Master Ronin Shrine when Vader engaged Bol Chatak. However, Vader was able to overcome this limitation fairly swiftly, developing a refined version of Djemso that he had learned as Anakin, that continued to include Form 4 Mataru and Form 3 Sarisu elements, but adding Form 2 Makashi blade work into the mix, as well as implementing strikes from Form 7 Juyo to the mix. In fact, by the time of his first visit to Kashyyyk in the early reign of the Empire, Vader had incorporated aspects of all combat forms conceivable into his fighting style, even the highest and most dangerous ones. Rather than attempting to fight through the bulky and heavy armor, Vader fought with it, utilizing the army's weight and his powerful, overwhelming prosthetics to provide his blows with incredible force, while relying on the main articulation points at the elbows and wrists for precision like Makashi. With this new form, Vader regained some of his old agility, and his blade work became brutally effective. He never utilized anything less than a killing blow, and his sword play demonstrated extraordinary precision and accuracy, unpredictability, and speed, notwithstanding the two-handed grip he typically favored. Even his most simplistic blows contained enough strength to nearly disarm less experienced opponents, while additional weight and bulk of Vader's cybernetics and armor made engaging Ataru-esque acrobatics considerably more difficult than it had been, causing him to typically refrain from making use of such maneuvers during combat. The Dark Lord proved to be fully capable of performing such acrobatics if he used force augmentation. When pressed, in the end, he was a more effective warrior than he had been before Kenobi had made him, gorging himself on the hate and pain he felt from his lightsaber combat and his bulky suit of armor in order to fuel his attacks to brutal and merciless effectiveness. Vader proved to be able to effectively apply this personalized variant in a multitude of ways, sometimes opting to fight one-handed, using an unorthodox form of Makashi, relying on precision and economy of movement as well as grace, learning one final lesson from Count Dooku, perhaps his greatest teacher in the era of the Clone Wars, through trial by fire. But thanks to the added strength his prosthetics afforded him, he became a far greater duelist than Dooku ever could hope to be, maintaining a great deal of power, even in his more precise blows. He demonstrated this method against the likes of Oli Starstone and Luke Skywalker. When forced onto the defensive, Vader, apparently utilizing Sarisu in his own customized manner, would fight with a two-handed grip, elbows pressed tightly to his sides, with the blade held out in front of him, manipulating it deftly with his wrists only. This method proved effective enough for protecting his vulnerable chest-mounted control panel and respirator, but at least in his early applications of it was not as effective as protecting his vulnerable limbs, as shown in his duel with Ronin Shrine during the subjugation of Kashyyyk, in which Ronin managed to score 2 blows on the Sith Lord. By the time he faced Obi-Wan Kenobi during their final duel on the first Death Star, Vader had apparently overcome this, able to both attack and defend himself adequately against the so-called Master of Sarisu. Kenobi could not find any opening to exploit, allowing Vader to overwhelm him, and him to perish as a result. While he utilized his customized style to great effect, even against multiple opponents, Vader occasionally eschewed precision and refinement for strength-oriented defensive barges, as demonstrated during his duel against Luke Skywalker on Bespin and against Shrine on Kashyyyk. Vader had learned his lesson from his duel with Kenobi. He mastered his emotions in combat, controlling them and harnessing them even against his most emotional opponents like Obi-Wan and Luke, calling upon calculated bursts of dark side energy while not being blinded by emotions running amok like he was as Anakin, especially during his duel on Mustafar, where he called upon calculated bursts of rage, fighting with determination and restlessness, rather than pure fury and unauthenticated economy of movement. Vader also frequently, when in his spare time, trained with his lightsaber in and utilizing droids and combat droids, even writing and documenting in the journal of Darth Malgus that Sidious had given him, with Sidious hoping that Vader would aspire to Malgus, as a warrior who had gone through similar strain and pain, and still became a pure brute and warrior of the dark side. He noted that there were few things he could solve with a lightsaber, and that droids were only useful as combat dummies. He used ASP-19s by 3.5 ABY, based on the ASP series droid. The ASP-19s were lightsaber combat droids that were faster, more agile, and stronger than an ordinary man, and programmed with the knowledge of 100 swordmasters and over a dozen fighting styles. They had defeated them time and time again effortlessly, and thus ordered new, improved batches of them. As his finesse and skill and mastery improved, Vader found that they had become too easy to defeat, so much that he took to battling them in 2-on-1 matches. Despite his reduced mobility due to his hulky cybernetics, Vader had little difficulty defending himself from duelists utilizing fast-paced styles like Ataru, as he demonstrated skill both against Starkiller and Jedi Master Anya Kuro, the Dark Woman. However, despite his skill, Vader's method was not flawless. Although Vader was a hulking brute of the dark side, his lightsaber style still had his flaws, as every lightsaber style does, particularly during situations where he believed he was facing an inferior opponent, which made him opt for a quick and devastating offense, not calculating that they could be more powerful than he originally conceived. Vader could be caught off guard or frustrated, causing his usually steadfast defense to fail. For example, during his duel with Galen Merrick on the first Death Star, Vader began the duel with an all-out offensive, believing that he would quickly overwhelm his opponent. Merrick, however, initially took a defensive stance against the overpowering Vader, deflecting or dancing around Vader's attacks while expending as little energy as possible. Furthermore, Merrick's taunts about Vader's instability and inability to break free of Sidious's control and harness of his master interfered with his focus and power. Vader ultimately expended most of his energy in a failed attempt to subdue Merrick, and was knocked down, and though despite of these mistakes, he nearly managed to defeat Merrick. However, when Merrick suddenly countered with Force Lightning, breaking Vader's momentum and turning the duel decisively in Merrick's favour, as he interfered with Vader's prosthetics and cybernetics, allowing Merrick to gain the upper hand. At which point, he took advantage of the offense to push back his master, who was unable to defend himself against Merrick's force abilities, due to his exhaustion and the weight of his armour, which ended up causing his defeat. Vader quickly learned from his mistake, as he demonstrated during his duel with the Starkiller clone on Kamino a few months later. During this battle, he utilised a more defensive set of tactics against the new Starkiller clone, who was far more powerful, as noted by Vader, than the original Starkiller. Possessing all the knowledge and training through a series of flashbacks Vader had imported into his mind during the cloning process. He maintained a more controlled, less prideful mindset, allowing him to battle on par with and even gain the upper hand, causing Starkiller, who was even more powerful than his initial template, to ultimately realize that the best he could possibly hope for in a duel against Vader was a stalemate, and even this was something that was immensely difficult. As such, having been disarmed of his weapons, Starkiller was forced to resort to trickery to defeat Vader, banking on the hope that his former master's desire to keep him alive would provide him with an opening if he offered to surrender. In Vader's fight with Darth Maul, the three prophets of the dark side admitted that the two Sith were more evenly matched in dueling capabilities than it previously thought. However, they initially believed Maul would ultimately triumph. In a technical sense, they were correct. Once Vader inadvertently granted more access to Jar Kai by cutting the Zabrak saber staff in half. He quickly realized that he was outclassed, as he could not contend with the reborn clone of Darth Maul, who was more powerful than Dooku, and was on par with Vader's own power, perhaps in his full potential. None of the dual-blade practitioners that he had fought in the past, like the likes of Asajj Ventress and Starkiller, were as intense, rageful, and unorthodox as Maul, who had earned the art of lightsaber combat directly from Palpatine himself, a luxury that Vader would never be treated to. He was nonetheless able to kill Maul, but barely survived the ordeal. He had relatively easier time against the aged Obi-Wan Kenobi shortly afterwards, albeit with the added sense of caution. He was able to steadily wear down his own master and become pressuring him. He had not actually managed to kill him before Kenobi could become one with the Force, disappearing into it. One thing I'd like to note that in the Reborn Maul fight, he only managed to defeat the Reborn Maul by impaling both of them through his abdomen, catching Maul completely off guard and ending the clone definitively, in a move of pure rage. Vader sometimes cast aside all defense, pairing it with alongside Dune Mok, which Dooku also used on Anakin, learning one final lesson from his old master. Another duelist who proved capable of challenging Vader was his own son, Luke Skywalker. In their initial engagements, such as the one on Bespin, Vader proved his undisputed superior, though it still took some effort to defeat Skywalker, who displayed a great deal of innate talent despite his minimal level of training by Old Ben and Grandmaster Yoda. However, on board the second Death Star was not mere luck. Luke defeated Vader, capitalizing and mirroring his father's Form 5 to Gemso technique, and although Vader was much slower and older, he is still a formidable opponent and nigh undefeatable. Skywalker responded with his own furious demonstration of the Sky's raw power, and marked his increase in skill, and enabled him to beat Vader's strength to strength. Luke ultimately bested Vader by drawing on the power of the dark side, amplifying his physical prowess with the usage of his pure rage. This sudden display of aggression and power toward the end of their bout caught Vader completely off guard, allowing Luke to drive him back to the reactor shaft and overwhelm the experienced Sith Lord, ending the duel definitively on board the second Death Star. Well, my acolytes, what did you think of this video and a pure breakdown on Darth Vader's unbeatable lightsaber form? What did you think? Do you think that Darth Vader is the most formidable lightsaber duelist to ever have existed? Or do you believe that in the George Lucas claim that he is a depressed cyborg man with diminished powers compared to his Jedi self? Or are you with us in Legends continuity, that he's a force of nature, fought through countless altercations with his master, his son, and various beings, becoming a force of nature, a pure embodiment of the dark side of the Force? Farewell, my acolytes. I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. The Force will be with you, and remember, no matter how bad the galaxy may seem, a light will always be glimmering, even in the darkest of places.